Welcome to the next video in our series, Was This God's Idea? A series on the creation account of Genesis, points, counterpoints, and implications. We are still in part one as we look at how to approach the Bible and how to approach Genesis in particular. Our question this week that we are looking at is Genesis 1 through 11 like the other creation stories and the other accounts of ancient literature? And instead of looking at the creation story itself, which actually has a lot of uniquenesses, compared to other creation stories, there's a lot of diversity in the creation stories themselves and how all of life started. There is an account that is very similar across many stories from many cultures, and that is the flood story, the account of there being a global flood. So we're going to take that particular story, that particular account, and look at that this week. So we have the Gilgamesh epic. So this is one of the earliest accounts of a flood story. And in it, the sky god Anu decides to send a flood, and another god opposes the plan. So they inform this character, this kind of a Noah-like character, Utnapishtim, who builds an ark to save life with instructions from Ea, one of the gods. Storm comes, and it's so severe that it actually scares the gods. It's written that they cowered like dogs and screamed like a woman in childbirth. When it's all over, the ark lands on Mount Nimish. Utnapishtim releases a dove, then a swallow, then a raven, and the raven does not return. In the end, Utnapishtim sacrifices to the gods after the flood. The setting of all of this is in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. So what we find in this story is many similarities to the flood of Noah found in Genesis. So the Epic of Gilgamesh, or the Gilgamesh epic, is one of the more popular creation accounts, and it's very similar to what we read about in the Bible. Another account is the Babylonian Epic of Atrahasis. Atrahasis. I think I'm saying that right. And in this flood story, what we have is very close. It's even identical in parts to the story I just shared with you, but it also contains a pre-flood story, kind of a setup for it. God creates humans to do their undesired work, like digging canals, for example. But then the gods get annoyed at how loud the humans are while doing the work, and so they decide to flood them and kill them. Now, in this story, there are some similarities, obviously, still, because it's so close to the Gilgamesh epic, to the flood of Noah found in Genesis. So again, we have strong similarities. There's another flood story where the gods want to flood the world, and there's this king that is warned about it. So in this case, the storm lasts 7 days, 7 nights, and then the king makes an opening in the top of a huge boat, and also worships the sun god and is granted eternal life. There's some similarities, not as many as in the other story, to the flood of Noah found in Genesis. So these are three of the more ancient, more popular flood myths or flood accounts that exist. And we do see similarities to those in Genesis. Now, in Egypt, as far as looking at other stories, there really isn't a close one. The closest story we have is the Book of the Cow of Heaven, about a sun god's plan to slaughter humanity in response to a rebellious plot, but people are spared annihilation. Now, in this, we have no flood, there's no ark, there's no hero. The stories that we have looked at here in this little video are actually just a few examples of many, many flood narratives that exist from all over the world. Many different cultures have these flood narratives, and they are very common in certain elements of it. So that leaves us with a couple of questions that we're going to ponder this week. And that is, could the similarities among the flood stories be because they are all remembering the same basic event? Now, people have different perspectives on this, and they come at it from two different angles. Because there's so many flood stories, and because Genesis looks like all the others, it must not be true. And then the other side is, because there's so many flood stories, if there really was an event, then everybody would be sharing in their traditions their version of that event. So which one could it be? One of the takeaways from all of this that we need to really focus on is that even though there are many similarities in all of these stories, the Hebrew account that we find in the Bible in Genesis presents God very differently than the gods in the other accounts. You may remember the example I said that the story we shared where the gods were actually scared, or the gods got annoyed and they had to do something about people making too much noise. They can't control their feelings. They can't control themselves in a way. What we find in Genesis is a God who is very in control of everything. Sorry about that. And so that distinction stands out. So another question that is raised in all this is, could the writings in Genesis actually have been written in response to some of the other creation stories and flood stories that were out there? So that's all I'm going to share in this video. Hopefully you can join the online discussion or the Zoom discussions, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.